The new Xbox is essentially going to be a Windows 11 machine, and I really have problems with that. One of the problems I have is that Windows 11 machines, indeed Windows machines in general, don't last as long as Linux machines do. And that's not because of hardware, it's because of software. It's because Microsoft kills old hardware so you can go out and buy new hardware. This is called planned obsolescence. And it's costing people money. And and also, and this, episode is really geared towards what if you're using your gaming device to do other things like run a household or run a business, etc. If you're rolling like that and you can afford to pay $1,200, $1,100 or more, according to Steam's metrics, 1% of people playing Steam games pay about $3,000 or more for a PC. Which I'm sure they're doing other stuff with it because, if you can game on a $3,000 PC, you can do a whole lot of things on that same device. Gary Newell, one of the founders and current head honcho of Steam, has had a relationship with Microsoft for years. Indeed, he's an employee or an ex-employee of Microsoft. So he is very well aware of Windows shortcomings, and essentially he has played David to Microsoft's Goliath for years and years. And the thing about 2025 versus 2013 in terms of Linux is Linux in 2025 is a lot different. I used Linux in 2013. In 2013, there was no install shield in Linux. The install shield is what allows you to basically answer questions and have a program installed, which is why people who think, Windows is easier than Linux, it's why they think that. Well, now Linux has install shields, and I think that's a massive barrier to entry that basically the fun-loving folks at Fedora, which is a flavor of Linux, have essentially gotten rid of. There's also a lot more in what we call the different software stores where you go to download stuff in the repositories. And you can tell that the changes are happening because you can now find Chrome in the, the little repo stores. And for those of you who don't know, there's a serious, essentially ideological war between Google Chrome and consumer-facing PC using Linux that has been going on for years. And I think that Windows is getting so bad that even Chrome, even Google is realizing we have to make regular, what I call full nicotine Chrome for Linux. And quite frankly, I think that's great because at the end of the day, I don't care if you use an Abacus, right? To me, it's about safety and security and being as anonymous and safe as you want to be, and making sure the computer in your house is actually your computer. And that's what got me on my Linux journey, is I wanted the computer in my house to be mine and not to have Microsoft update something away or make it so I had to continually see ads for stuff while I'm trying to play a video game or while I'm trying to watch a television show or whatever. And now with Linux I can do that. And that's why I wanted to make a follow-up video to the, to the previous one. Not because this is going to be a Linux channel now. What is anti-cheat? You hear that all the time. And why do so many games require it? Well, first of all, not nearly every game requires it. So it's not the 99% that you hear from a lot of memes. And second, it's primarily Windows games. The reason why is in the days before Steam, you had to install Windows games as a program. With Steam, you can run your games in a sandbox. This sandbox allows you to play games on different operating systems, such as Linux, in all the various flavors. The major publishers of video games say that anti-cheat is very integral to their business because it allows for the integrity of the games to be secured and unassailable. Anti-cheat that has what we call root access, which is actually a misnomer. Really what we're saying is admin access to a computer can be very problematic and frankly dangerous if done incorrectly and if used by the various publishers incorrectly, simply because they give you high-level access to a computer. For this reason, many businesses do not let you game simply because they cannot trust third-party companies to have root access to your computer. Personally, I could see something like this for esports or competitive gaming at a high level, but just for regular people who want to play Call of Duty, I don't really see it. And frankly, I don't think a lot of people do either. And that also brings me to what I was going to talk about. The prevalence of games such as Battlefield 6 or Call of Duty and the publishers reliant on anti-cheats leads to the basic myth or meme that, all games have anti-cheat, or that all games don't work on Linux. Neither of that is true. Why do we have these myths running around the gaming space here on YouTube? The short answer is that YouTube has become both an arcade and also an educational bazaar. And here's where I think Linux kind of runs into that. There are a lot of Linfluencers who will take preposterous builds, such as a 12-year-old Apple or an ancient MacBook, and they'll throw Linux Mint on it and tell everybody that, oh yeah, you can write documents and game on Linux, etc. What they don't tell you is that Linux Mint is frankly as easy as it is to use. Because it relies on older kernels, it doesn't exactly have up-to-date drivers. Also, speaking from personal experience, when I last used Linux Mint, I couldn't even access Steam as an icon on my desktop. I actually had to go into the terminal and actually load Steam from the terminal. Now, I can hear what you're saying. Why do so many Linfluencers have, frankly, preposterous builds? Like, nobody really puts Linux on a 13-year-old machine thinking that's going to be their daily driver while they play video games and run their business and also study for school or whatever you want to do with a computer other than regulate on some monsters or play the odd sporting event while a file is rendering or a website matriculating into a search engine or whatever it is we're doing to pass the time. The answer is simple: clicks. The theory goes that most people simply wouldn't want to watch a realistic build on a Linux machine, similar to how a lot of gamers and people in the gaming space on YouTube wouldn't want to play the average build of a game, because most people, the theory goes, wouldn't want to watch that. Like, of course you're going to play Germany in Hoi 4, but you want to see how Finland does in Hoi 4. Why? Because it's funny, or so the theory goes. But I have a question. What happens if a very large consumer-facing operating system is going through serious trouble? What happens if it's pushing out update after update and killing off monitors, killing off keyboards, killing Wi-Fi routers, or even killing itself. What happens if the admin privileges that these companies want you to give them so their anti-cheat software can work in case, I don't know, you quit being an accountant or a dentist or whatever you're doing and decide to go be an esport, athlete, whatever that is. What happens when the anti-cheat admin privileges go awry and your system dies? What happens then? Well, according to Gary Newell, the thing that happens is you can go to the Steam machine. Hi, I go by Metallic Penguin on the internet, and you're not hearing things and you're not going crazy. This is a follow-up video to my last video. Why did I put it out? Because I wanted to give some very, very specific examples of what exactly I think is going on, why the Steam machine is actually a good idea, and why, even though, shock of shocks, it's a computer, I think pretty much everybody should get one if they want to continue gaming. The very first concern that I had upon seeing the Steam machine for the very first time was that it didn't have a keyboard. Why do you need a keyboard? Well, when you're running Linux, there's an expectation that you update the system yourself. Now, I know, the nice people over at Steam are going to update the system for you. They've been doing that on the handheld version of, the Steam machine for a while now. And that's fine. Here's the thing about Linux that anybody who has Linux will tell you. Your machines will last. As an adult of the last recession, I'm going to make a confident prediction. There are going to be people who buy the Steam machine when it comes out and for the life cycle of this product that are going to have the Steam machine long after SteamOS goes away, long after Steam goes away, and it's going to be sitting in closets in most of those cases. I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to do that. You can get a keyboard, you can run console commands because it's either going to have a terminal because it's a Linux thing, or you're going to be able to put another OS on there. And here's something really cool that I saw, not just in my comments, but in other people's comments. Yes, this is a computer. This thing isn't really a console, it's a computer. Also, yes, you can play games on Steam with something other than the Steam OS. For example, I play games currently on Nobara. I like Nobara. Nobara is fine. There's a couple of basically relatively minor quibbles that I have with Nobara that I'm not going to bore you with here. Suffice to say that unless something happens to Nobara, I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. One of the other issues that I had with the Steam machine, which I found out was actually not really an issue because it seems as though the nice folks over at Steam are going to let you do this, is you'll be able to mod the Steam machine. You'll be able to take the screws out of the back and put in your own RAM and put in your own storage, etc. For example, the highest max storage apparently that's going to be available for it is going to be the 2 terabyte. Well, what happens if you want a 4 terabyte? Well, I'm here to tell you that you'll be able to do that. The other thing that I think a lot of people need to understand is, and this is why I love Linux, 16 gigs of RAM on Windows is a lot slower than that same 16 gigabytes of RAM on Linux. Windows is a resource hog. That is serious. That's a very, very serious thing. Something else that I think is really, really cool is that any machine that you can play Steam games on that look pretty, you can also do other things, such as, for example, edit film or video. There's another thing going on that I don't think a lot of people that aren't tech adjacent or in the tech space quite understand. Windows 11, while not as bad as Windows 8 back in 2012, 2013 was, Windows 11 is having serious performance issues. You'll have advertisements interrupt your programs, literally like your computer programs. You'll have updates completely interrupt your games. You'll have updates, interrupt your life essentially. And because there's so many background processes running in the back of a Windows 11 machine, even the simple act of turning the computer off can take forever simply because you turning the computer off is basically a suggestion to a Windows 11 machine. Oh no, there's a ton of background processes, etc., that have to continue, that have to keep going, and I've even heard of completely ignoring things like power off or things like that. I've even heard, horror stories in some cases of you're trying to get around Dropbox or Copilot because you want to save the document on your computer. Well, Microsoft would rather gather intelligence about you to sell that to third parties. Plus, there's tons of backdoors in every single Microsoft situation. Windows 11, having more than any. But then again, it's not quite as bad as Windows 8. Windows 8, I remember I had a laptop that ran Windows 8. And just the simple act of reading the newspaper was, something that this laptop could barely do. And it was so crazy. This is honestly what got me on my, what I like to call Microsoft skeptical road that I'm currently on today. Something that greatly intrigues me about this machine is the form factor and the fact that it's being marketed as a living room computer. I think that's great, honestly. I really do. Because it's going to expose more people to Linux, and it's going to make more people technologically curious. And quite frankly, I think curiosity about one's technology is nothing but good stuff. I really do. I am what you call from the Oregon Trail generation. So I came up with a lot of personal computer advances. And what I've discovered through all of them is that you can basically self-educate. And even though I did just hit YouTube for, those creators chasing the fun and entertaining aspects of educating or exposing people to Linux or whatever, I'm looking at you, viral, trash can Mac with Linux on it. But you can actually learn stuff if you know where to go. Frankly, I find ChatGPT to be an excellent source to learn basic and even in some cases intermediate Linux tips and tricks. And the coolest thing is not every Linux flavor is created equal. I had a Linux flavor a little while ago that I could literally bring video files back from the dead. Something in Windows that would have been impossible. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys basically a follow-up to why I'm really excited about the Steam Machine. And I promise to continue with my regularly scheduled programming now. Be on the lookout for some pretty cool stuff. But, thanks, and remember, everybody, you're lapping everybody on the couch. Have a great day.